The war that broke out in the summer of 1914 was expected to end quickly, according to the military authorities. Instead, it would last more than 4 years. The introduction of new weapons and in particular the massive use of artillery at an unprecedented level led to heavy losses for all the main protagonists. By the time peace was finally established, Europe had lost its role as world leader, and it was United States President Woodrow Wilson who put forward the principles for a new international order. We have a 20 parts video series for you where we cover every aspect of the First World War, battles, alliances, and many more. So make sure to like this video, subscribe, and turn on post notifications for future videos. Also, let us know in the comments below what do you think. And now, back to the video. On the morning of June 28, 1914, the Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria and his wife Sophie, Duchess of Hohenberg, embarked on a fateful journey through the streets of Sarajevo. Their procession was intended to display the mighty and presence of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, but it was not to be. As their car approached City Hall, a bomb was thrown in their direction by Nedeljko Kabrinović, a member of the Black Hand, a nationalist group seeking to end Austro-Hungarian rule over Bosnia. Fortunately, the bomb missed its mark, and the Archduke and his wife escaped unharmed, allowing the procession to continue. However, this sense of relief was short-lived. Approximately half an hour later, as the Archduke's car returned along a revised route, it passed in front of Schiller's store, where another member of the Black Hand, Gavrilo Princip, lay in wait. Princip seized the opportunity and fired 2 shots, fatally wounding both the Archduke and his wife. This assassination, carried out by a group of young Bosnian Serbs who were vehemently opposed to the Austro-Hungarian presence in their homeland, set off a chain of events that would soon plunge Europe into a devastating conflict. In the weeks following the assassination, the Austro-Hungarian government saw an opportunity to assert its dominance over the region. They issued an ultimatum to Serbia, making demands that were intentionally unacceptable to provoke a confrontation. Serbia's ambition to unite all southern Slavic peoples into a greater Yugoslavia posed a direct threat to the integrity of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. The ultimatum and Serbia's response escalated tensions rapidly. On July 28, 1914, Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia, and Belgrade was bombed. The conflict quickly drew in other nations due to a web of alliances and mutual defense agreements that had been established across Europe. By July 30th, Russia, bound by treaty to protect Serbia, declared a general mobilization. This action prompted Germany, Austria-Hungary's ally, to declare war on Russia on August 1st. France, allied with Russia, also began mobilizing its forces. The situation deteriorated further when Germany declared war on France on August 3rd and invaded Belgium the following day. This invasion violated Belgian neutrality, compelling the United Kingdom to enter the war in defense of Belgium and in support of its allies France and Russia. Within a matter of days, Europe was engulfed in war. The carefully constructed system of alliances, intended to maintain a balance of power and prevent large-scale conflicts, instead acted as a catalyst for widespread hostilities. Public opinion across the continent failed to mobilize effectively to preserve the peace, and the war that many believed would be short-lived instead persisted for over 4 years, drawing in numerous other nations. The war expanded as new countries joined the fray. The Ottoman Empire entered the war on the side of the Central Powers in November 1914, followed by Italy switching sides to join the Allies in May 1915. Bulgaria allied with the Central Powers in October 1915. The conflict spread beyond Europe, involving European colonial empires and gaining a global dimension. Portugal and Romania joined the Allies in March and September 1916, respectively, and Greece in June 1917. A significant turning point came in April 1917 when the United States, after enduring unrestricted submarine warfare and other provocations, declared war on Germany. This entry by the United States not only bolstered the Allied forces but also marked the war's transition into a truly global conflict, impacting countries and colonies around the world. The war, which had begun with the assassination in Sarajevo, evolved into one of the deadliest conflicts in human history, fundamentally altering the political landscape of Europe and the world. The early 20th century saw the formation of strategic military alliances, which set the stage for a complex and precarious balance of power in Europe. The creation of the Triple Entente, consisting of France, Russia, and the United Kingdom, presented a significant strategic dilemma for Germany. In the event of a conflict, Germany would face the daunting prospect of fighting a two-front war, against France in the west and Russia in the east. To address this challenge, the German General Staff, led by General Alfred von Schlieffen, developed a meticulous plan as early as 1905. Known as the Schlieffen Plan, it was designed to quickly defeat France before Russia could fully mobilize its massive army. Schlieffen estimated that it would take Russia approximately 6 weeks to organize its forces, providing Germany with a critical window to concentrate its efforts on the Western Front. Despite the formidable size and strength of the German military, Schlieffen recognized that a direct assault on the heavily fortified French border in Lorraine would be costly and time-consuming. Instead, he proposed a bold and audacious maneuver, bypassing the French fortifications by invading neutral Belgium. The plan called for a rapid and powerful right-wing sweep through Belgium and northern France, encircling Paris from the west and trapping the French armies. The Schlieffen Plan was predicated on speed and decisiveness. It envisioned a massive deployment of German troops to the right wing, which would execute a wide flanking movement through Belgium, enveloping and crushing the French forces. Once France was defeated, Germany would then shift its focus eastward to confront Russia. However, when war finally broke out in 1914, the execution of the Schlieffen Plan was compromised. The strength of the German right wing, which Schlieffen had deemed essential for success, was reduced to reinforce German forces in Alsace and on the Russian front. This weakening of the right wing diluted the plan's effectiveness and set the stage for a protracted and grueling conflict. From the perspective of the French General Staff, Belgium was also seen as a likely theater of operations. However, France's British ally was strongly opposed to violating Belgian neutrality, a stance that complicated strategic planning. Instead, the French military developed Plan 16, a strategy that focused on launching an offensive in the central section of the front, specifically to the east of the Moselle River and between Verdun and Metz. Plan 16 was predicated on a doctrine of offensive action, reflecting the French belief in the élan vital, or the fighting spirit of their troops. The plan aimed to penetrate deep into German territory, thereby forcing a decisive engagement. To prepare for this offensive, the French government extended the length of mandatory military service to 3 years, ensuring that a larger and more experienced force would be available when hostilities commenced. Despite these preparations, the outbreak of war caught both sides off guard. The additional manpower envisioned by the extension of military service had not yet fully materialized, and the initial engagements did not proceed as planned. The violation of Belgian neutrality by German forces not only brought the United Kingdom into the war, but also galvanized Allied resistance. The early months of the war saw the implementation of these grand strategies, but reality quickly diverged from the plans laid out by military theorists. The German advance through Belgium and northern France was initially successful, but eventually stalled due to logistical challenges, stiffening resistance, and the sheer scale of the conflict. The Battle of the Marne in September 1914 marked a significant turning point, as the Allies managed to halt the German advance and prevent the encirclement of Paris. On the Eastern Front, Russia mobilized more rapidly than anticipated, launching offensives into East Prussia and Galicia. The initial Russian advances created additional pressure on Germany, necessitating the diversion of forces from the Western Front. The failure of both the Schlieffen Plan and Plan 16 underscored the complexity and unpredictability of modern warfare. The anticipated quick victories gave way to a prolonged and bloody stalemate, with both sides digging in for trench warfare that would define the Western Front for the next 4 years. The strategic plans of 1914, conceived in a different era, proved ill-suited to the realities of industrialized conflict, leading to a war of attrition that would reshape Europe and the world. The period from 1871 to 1914 was marked by profound transformations and escalating tensions in Europe. The map of Europe, which had been meticulously crafted by negotiators at the Congress of Vienna in 1815, underwent significant changes. 6 great powers now dominated the continent, each striving to assert its influence and intervene in international affairs. These powers were the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the German Empire, Italy, Russia, France, and England. In the heart of Europe, 3 powers that had been fragmented in 1815 emerged as unified entities by the late 19th century. The Austro-Hungarian Empire, a dual monarchy established in 1867, faced the complex task of managing diverse ethnic and national groups within its borders. This multi-ethnic empire sought to expand its influence in the Balkans, where nationalist movements were gaining momentum. The German Empire, unified in 1871 under the leadership of Prussia, aimed to consolidate its newly achieved cohesion. This process involved integrating various German states into a single national framework. Similarly, Italy, unified in the same year, focused on solidifying its national unity and addressing regional disparities. To the east, the vast Russian Empire extended from Poland to the Pacific Ocean, encompassing a multitude of ethnic groups across Europe and Asia. The Tsars were dedicated to maintaining the unity of this sprawling empire. They pursued a pan-Slavic policy, particularly in the Balkans, aiming to support Slavic nations and counter Austro-Hungarian and Ottoman influence in the region. In Western Europe, France and England, both long-standing and relatively democratic nations, engaged in competitive colonial policies. Their imperial ambitions often brought them into conflict, not only with each other, but also with other colonial powers, as they sought to expand and protect their overseas empires. Despite the dominance of these great powers, numerous ethnic and national groups remained dissatisfied. Their demands for recognition based on language, religion, and culture increased, especially within multinational empires like Austro-Hungary and Russia, and even within nation-states like France and Italy. To manage these internal pressures, states often sought to reinforce cohesion through various means, sometimes making concessions. Russia adopted a policy of divide and rule in regions like Finland and the Baltic states, aiming to prevent unified opposition. Hungary pursued Magyarization, promoting the Hungarian language and culture to the displeasure of Croats and Romanians within its territory. Austria attempted to mediate between German and Czech populations in Bohemia. England faced the Irish question, considering an autonomy project to address Irish demands for self-governance. Some of these demands were met with partial or full concessions. Iceland gradually gained political autonomy from Denmark. Norway's independence was recognized by Sweden, and new states in the Balkans emerged from the disintegrating Ottoman Empire. Diplomatically, the relations among the great powers underwent a significant transformation. The ideal of a harmonious European order envisioned at the Congress of Vienna gave way to a system of alliances. By the turn of the century, Europe was divided into two hostile blocs: the Triple Alliance, Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy, and the Triple Entente, France, Russia, and England. This system of alliances was underpinned by intense national sentiment. Each nation within these blocs claimed a civilizing mission, and state patriotism was promoted through public education and military service, often leading to aggressive nationalism. This nationalism was further fueled by crises and conflicts that arose within and between the Allied blocs. Between 1905 and 1914, Europe experienced a series of crises that heightened tensions. These included confrontations between Russia and Austria-Hungary in the Balkans and disputes between France and Germany over colonial territories. The Moroccan crises, 1905 and 1911, and the Balkan Wars, 1912 to 1913, exemplified the growing instability and competition among the great powers. Despite these crises, efforts at dialogue and cooperation continued. However, the mechanisms of alliance systems and the accelerating arms race created an environment where even minor conflicts had the potential to escalate. The intricate web of alliances and the buildup of military capabilities made it increasingly difficult to resolve disputes peacefully. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand in 1914 was the spark that ignited this volatile situation. The pre-existing tensions and rivalries, exacerbated by nationalist fervor and militaristic policies, quickly spiraled out of control. The mobilization of alliances and the rapid succession of war declarations plunged Europe into a conflict that would become the First World War. The period from 1871 to 1914, therefore, represents a crucial phase in European history. It was a time of nation-building and empire expansion, but also of rising nationalism and deepening divisions. The intricate and often contradictory forces at play during these years set the stage for the devastating clash of nations that would reshape the continent and the world. The weakening of the Ottoman Empire throughout the 19th century set the stage for a tumultuous period of national uprisings and territorial disputes in the Balkans. European powers, each with their own strategic interests, often intervened in the region, either supporting or suppressing the aspirations of various Balkan peoples for independence. By 1875, the Ottoman Empire's control over the Balkans was already shaky. While Serbia and Romania had gained autonomy, the Sultan still held sway over most of the region. The first significant crisis erupted when heavy Ottoman taxes led to widespread revolts. The brutal repression of these uprisings by Turkish forces shocked European public opinion, yet the divided state of Europe rendered it incapable of imposing significant concessions on the Sultan. Seizing upon this European disunity, Tsar Alexander II of Russia declared war on the Ottoman Empire in 1877. Russian troops quickly advanced to the outskirts of Constantinople. The ensuing Treaty of San Stefano, signed in March 1878, imposed harsh terms on the Sultan, including the creation of a large autonomous Bulgarian state, which would encompass much of the Central Balkans and be heavily influenced by Russia. However, this arrangement alarmed other powers, particularly Austria-Hungary and Britain. Austria-Hungary saw the new Greater Bulgaria as an obstacle to its own territorial ambitions, while Britain perceived it as a threat to the strategic balance at the Straits. To prevent a broader conflict, German Chancellor Otto von Bismarck convened the Congress of Berlin in June 1878. The Congress of Berlin significantly altered the agreements made at San Stefano. Key outcomes included the recognition of the independence of Serbia, Romania, and Montenegro. Austria-Hungary was given administrative control over Bosnia-Herzegovina and the Sanjak of Novi Pazar. Meanwhile, Greater Bulgaria was downsized, losing territories in Thrace and being split into two entities, an autonomous Bulgaria and the Principality of Eastern Rumelia. Greece was promised Thessaly. Despite these changes, the new geopolitical map of the Balkans was far from stable. The partial disintegration of Ottoman control sparked a wave of nationalism among the Balkan peoples. The Russian Empire, having been forced to accept a diminished Bulgaria, deepened its rivalry with Austria-Hungary. Tensions continued to simmer, and in 1908, Austria-Hungary formally annexed Bosnia-Herzegovina. This came to be because of opportunities presented at that time. As the Ottoman Empire weakened in the late 19th century, the Austro-Hungarian Empire was granted special rights to occupy and administer the provinces of Bosnia and Herzegovina. This region had a significant Serbian population, and the newly independent Kingdom of Serbia harbored aspirations to eventually incorporate these territories. The Serbs, being Slavic and Greek Orthodox, looked to the Tsar of Russia as their protector and champion. The situation escalated as Austro-Hungarian and Serbian ambitions clashed. After a period of confused diplomacy with Russia, Austria-Hungary preempted Serbian aspirations by formally annexing Bosnia-Herzegovina in 1908. This move was a strategic effort to solidify Austro-Hungarian influence in the Balkans and counteract Serbian nationalist movements. To secure this annexation, Austria-Hungary made several concessions. They agreed to evacuate the Sanjak of Novi Pazar, a region that had served as a buffer between Serbia and Montenegro. Additionally, Austria-Hungary tacitly promised to support Russian aspirations for free passage through the Dardanelles, a crucial maritime route. However, this support was rendered moot as other European powers intervened to maintain Ottoman control of the Straits, fearing that Russian access would upset the balance of power in the region. The annexation sparked a significant international crisis, characterized by blustering threats of war and intense multilateral diplomacy. Despite their initial outrage, both Serbia and Russia eventually accepted the annexation as a fait accompli. The crisis, however, deepened the estrangement between Russia and Serbia on one side and Austria-Hungary on the other. This growing hostility planted the seeds for future conflicts, as both Russia and Serbia aspired to eventually overturn Austro-Hungarian gains and assert their own influence in the Balkans. Amid this crisis, Crete united with Greece, and Bulgaria declared full independence. In response to the shifting power dynamics, Russian diplomacy focused on fostering an alliance among the Balkan states. By early 1912, recognizing the vulnerability of the declining Ottoman Empire, the Christian states of Bulgaria, Greece, Montenegro, and Serbia negotiated the formation of the Balkan League. This alliance aimed to expel the Ottoman Turks from the Balkans and divide the conquered territories among themselves. The geopolitical landscape of the region was further complicated by the uprising of the Albanians, who sought independence from the Ottoman Empire and laid claim to territories that members of the Balkan League also desired. The First Balkan War began in October 1912, when the Balkan League launched a coordinated attack against the Ottoman Empire. The League's forces, composed of well-prepared and motivated armies, achieved a series of decisive victories. The Serbian army won crucial battles at Kumanovo and Bitola, while Bulgarian forces triumphed at the Battle of Kirk Kilis and the Battle of Lule Burgas. Greek troops, meanwhile, secured victories in southern Macedonia and Epirus, and the Montenegrins captured key positions in northern Albania. The rapid and overwhelming success of the Balkan League's offensives drove the Ottoman forces back to the outskirts of Constantinople, or modern-day Istanbul. By the end of 1912, the Ottoman Empire had lost almost all its European territories, retaining only a small foothold in Thrace. The League's victory was solidified by the Treaty of London in May 1913. which officially ended the First Balkan War and recognized the territorial gains of the Balkan states. However, the triumphant Allies soon fell into discord over the division of the newly acquired territories. Bulgaria, which had borne the brunt of the fighting, demanded a larger share of Macedonia, a region also claimed by Serbia and Greece. Tensions escalated as each nation sought to maximize its territorial gains, leading to a breakdown in negotiations. The resulting disagreements led to the outbreak of the Second Balkan War in June 1913. Bulgaria, feeling betrayed by its former allies, launched a surprise attack on Serbian and Greek positions in Macedonia. This aggressive move backfired as Serbia and Greece quickly formed a new alliance and counterattacked. Romania and the Ottoman Empire, seeing an opportunity to regain lost territories, also joined the war against Bulgaria. The combined forces of Serbia, Greece, Romania, and the Ottoman Empire decisively defeated Bulgaria. The Treaty of Bucharest, signed on August 10, 1913, redrew the map of the Balkans once more. Serbia emerged as the primary beneficiary, gaining much of Macedonia and establishing a common border with Montenegro. However, Austria-Hungary ensured Albania's independence, denying Serbia access to the Adriatic Sea. Greece expanded its territory to include Epirus, southern Macedonia, and most of the Aegean Islands. Bulgaria received some territory along the Aegean but had to cede southern Dobruja to Romania, falling short of its territorial aspirations. The Ottoman Empire managed to reclaim a small part of eastern Thrace, including the city of Edirne. The latest reshuffling of Balkan territories further intensified the rivalries between the great powers, especially between Russia and Austria-Hungary. Russia, as the protector of Slavic nations, particularly Serbia, found itself in direct opposition to Austria-Hungary, which had strategic interests in supporting Bulgaria and maintaining its influence in the region. These rivalries contributed significantly to the precarious balance of power in Europe. The heightened tensions and unresolved conflicts among the Balkan states, along with the great powers' competing interests, created a powder keg waiting to explode. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria in Sarajevo in June 1914 would soon ignite this volatile mix, leading directly to the outbreak of the First World War. The Balkan Wars had set the stage for a much larger and more devastating conflict, demonstrating the fragility of peace and the far-reaching consequences of nationalist ambitions and great power rivalries. Summer of 1914 witnessed the rapid escalation of the First World War, as carefully laid plans and alliances led to the full-scale mobilization of European powers. The opening months of the conflict were characterized by significant offensives, shaped by strategies developed in the preceding years. Germany's initial strategy, known as the Schlieffen Plan, was devised to avoid a protracted two-front war by swiftly defeating France before turning east to confront Russia. The plan hinged on a rapid and overwhelming advance through Belgium and into northern France, bypassing the heavily fortified Franco-German border. On August 4, 1914, German forces launched their offensive by crossing into Belgium, directly from Germany and via Luxembourg. Despite the valiant resistance of the Belgian army, which attempted to slow the German advance by defending strongholds such as Liege and Namur, they were ultimately too small to halt the invasion. The German right flank, consisting of 68 divisions, pushed westward with surprising speed and force. The French General Staff, underestimating the strength and direction of the German attack, quickly found their forces, along with the British Expeditionary Force, in disarray. The Battle of the Frontiers, which peaked on August 22, 1914, proved disastrous for the French, who lost 30,000 men in a single day. This battle saw intense fighting along the borders of France, Luxembourg, and Belgium, and it set the stage for the subsequent retreat of Allied forces. Faced with overwhelming German pressure, the French 4th and 5th Armies, along with the British Expeditionary Force, were forced to retreat, abandoning large swaths of territory from Verdun to Paris. Despite the severity of the situation, the retreat was conducted in an orderly fashion, allowing the Allies to regroup and prepare for a counteroffensive. By early September, the German advance had brought them perilously close to Paris, leading to a critical moment in the war. From September 5 to 12, 1914, the First Battle of the Marne unfolded. French and British forces, under the command of General Joseph Joffre and Field Marshal Sir John French, launched a determined counterattack against the advancing Germans. This battle, often referred to as the Miracle of the Marne, saw the Allies successfully halt the German advance and force a retreat back to the Aisne River. The German troops, having failed to secure a quick victory, began to dig in, creating a network of trenches. We will cover the Battle of Marne more in details in our next video. With the front lines stabilized along the Aisne, both sides sought to outflank each other in a series of maneuvers known as the Race to the Sea. This phase of the war, which lasted from September to November 1914, involved continuous attempts to extend the trench lines northward to the English Channel. By the end of November, the Western Front had solidified into a continuous line of entrenched positions stretching from the North Sea to the Swiss border, marking the beginning of trench warfare that would dominate the conflict for the next 4 years. While the Western Front descended into a deadlock, the Eastern Front saw rapid and dramatic movements. Contrary to German expectations, Russian armies mobilized more quickly than anticipated, launching an invasion of East Prussia on August 20, 1914. The initial Russian advance was met with a decisive response from German forces under the command of Generals Paul von Hindenburg and Erich Ludendorff. The Battle of Tannenberg, fought from August 26 to 30, resulted in a crushing defeat for the Russian Second Army, which suffered massive casualties and the capture of tens of thousands of soldiers. Despite this setback, Russian forces regrouped and continued their offensives further south. In Galicia, the Russian army achieved a significant victory at the Battle of Lemberg, now Lviv, in September 1914. They captured the city and occupied eastern Galicia, dealing a severe blow to Austro-Hungarian forces. This success underscored the challenges facing the Central Powers on multiple fronts. The offensives of 1914 set the stage for a prolonged and brutal conflict. The failure of the Schlieffen Plan marked the end of any hopes for a swift German victory in the West. The entrenchment on the Western Front and the continuous clashes on the Eastern Front indicated that the war would be far longer and more devastating than initially expected. The early battles demonstrated the deadly effectiveness of modern weaponry and the strategic importance of coordination and logistics. The immense loss of life and the destruction of vast territories foreshadowed the unprecedented scale of suffering that would characterize the First World War. As the fronts stabilized, both sides prepared for a war of attrition, where victory would hinge not just on battlefield successes, but on the ability to sustain and support their armies over the long haul. These initial clashes in 1914 shaped the strategies and expectations of the combatants, setting the stage for the grueling and transformative years that lay ahead. The world had entered a new era of warfare, one that would leave an indelible mark on the 20th century and beyond. The Battle of the Marne, fought from September 5 to 12, 1914, was a pivotal moment in the First World War, marking the end of the German advance into France and the beginning of trench warfare that would dominate the Western Front for the next 4 years. The battle is often heralded as the Miracle of the Marne, due to the dramatic reversal of fortunes for the Allied forces. By early September 1914, the German armies, executing the Schlieffen Plan, had made significant inroads into France. Their rapid advance had forced French and British forces into a retreat that threatened Paris. On September 2nd, as German troops approached, the French government debated declaring Paris an open city, which would have left it undefended, and then decided to relocate to Bordeaux to avoid capture and maintain governmental continuity. However, logistical challenges began to strain the German advance. The right wing of the German army, commanded by General Alexander von Kluck, decided to bypass Paris, redirecting their movement southeast. This decision was influenced by the need to shorten their overstretched supply lines, which were becoming increasingly difficult to maintain over the rapidly extended front. French reconnaissance aircraft played a crucial role in detecting the German shift. This intelligence allowed General Joseph Gallieni, the military governor of Paris, to take decisive action. Gallieni, recognizing the vulnerability of the German flank, ordered General Michel-Joseph Maunory's newly formed 6th Army to strike at von Kluck's exposed right flank. On September 5th, Maunory's forces engaged the German First Army near the Ourcq River, creating a breach in the German positions. This unexpected attack halted the German advance and forced von Kluck to redirect his forces to meet the new threat, thereby exposing a gap between his army and that of General Karl von Bülow's Second Army. General Joseph Joffre, the French commander-in-chief, seized the opportunity created by Maunory's attack. He ordered the Fifth Army, commanded by General Louis Franchet d'Espèrey, and the British Expeditionary Force, led by Field Marshal Sir John French, to exploit the breach between the German First and Second Armies. The Allied forces moved swiftly to penetrate the gap, driving a wedge between von Kluck and von Bülow. The German commanders, realizing the danger of encirclement, ordered a general retreat. Von Bülow's forces pulled back towards the northeast, while von Kluck's troops retreated northward. This maneuver widened the gap between the German armies, ensuring their tactical defeat but allowing them to avoid complete encirclement. Despite heavy casualties, the French and British forces were unable to fully capitalize on their breakthrough due to exhaustion and logistical limitations. Nevertheless, the German retreat marked a significant strategic victory for the Allies. The German armies fell back to the Aisne River, where they began to dig in, establishing defensive positions that would evolve into the extensive trench systems of the Western Front. The Battle of the Marne had profound implications for the course of the war. It thwarted the German objective of a quick victory in the West and forced a shift to a war of attrition. The stabilization of the front lines heralded a new phase of static, trench-based warfare, characterized by grueling battles and minimal territorial gains. The victory at the Marne also had a significant psychological impact. It bolstered Allied morale at a critical juncture, demonstrating that the German advance could be halted and reversed. For the Germans, the failure of the Schlieffen Plan necessitated a re-evaluation of their strategy. The anticipated swift campaign had transformed into a prolonged conflict, requiring immense resources and leading to widespread devastation. The Battle of the Marne must also be understood within the broader context of the early months of the war. It followed the Battle of the Frontiers, where French forces had suffered devastating losses, and the initial German successes in Belgium and northern France. The ability of the Allies to regroup and launch a successful counter-offensive despite these setbacks showcased the resilience and coordination of the French and British military leadership. In the years following the Battle of the Marne, the Western Front became the focal point of the First World War. The entrenched positions from the North Sea to the Swiss border symbolized the stalemate that defined much of the conflict. The battle itself became a symbol of Allied determination and a turning point that shaped the strategic dynamics of the war. World War progressed into its second year, it became evident that a swift, decisive victory was out of reach for both sides. The strategic landscape of the conflict changed dramatically in 1915 with the entry of new belligerents, leading to a significant multiplication of fronts and the broadening of the war's geographical scope. The Ottoman Empire's entry into the war on the side of the Central Powers in late 1914 brought immediate strategic consequences. By early 1915, military operations had spread to the Caucasus and the Arab provinces, where Ottoman forces engaged in battles with Russian and British forces. The Ottoman participation extended the conflict to new theaters, complicating the Allies' military efforts. Seeking to break the deadlock on the Western Front and to re-establish a supply route to Russia, French and British leaders planned an ambitious intervention in the Dardanelles. The Gallipoli Campaign, launched in early 1915, aimed to capture the Ottoman capital of Constantinople, modern-day Istanbul, by securing the Dardanelles Strait. The initial naval assault failed, leading to a land invasion on the Gallipoli Peninsula in April 1915. However, the campaign was met with fierce resistance from the well-entrenched Ottoman defenders under the command of Mustafa Kemal, later known as Ataturk. The Allies suffered heavy casualties and by the end of the year were forced to withdraw, marking a significant defeat. We will cover this campaign more in details in our next video. In May 1915, after months of negotiation and deliberation, Italy abandoned its neutrality and joined the Allies, motivated by promises of territorial gains, particularly in the region of Trentino and the city of Trieste. The Italian army launched a series of offensives against Austro-Hungarian forces along the Isonzo River, known as the Battles of the Isonzo. Despite numerous attempts, the Italian offensives resulted in high casualties and minimal territorial gains due to the formidable Austro-Hungarian defenses. The German General Staff, recognizing the opportunity to exploit the weaker Russian front, shifted its focus eastward. In May 1915, combined German and Austro-Hungarian forces launched a series of coordinated offensives in Lithuania, Poland, and Galicia. These offensives, including the Gorlice-Tarnow offensive, resulted in significant territorial gains and inflicted heavy losses on the Russian army. By mid-September, the front had moved to a line extending from Riga to the Romanian border. Despite these setbacks, the Russian army was not decisively defeated, continuing to pose a threat to the Central Powers. On the Western Front, the French army, under General Joseph Joffre, launched multiple offensives in an effort to break through the entrenched German lines. These attacks, characterized by intense artillery bombardments followed by infantry assaults, resulted in substantial casualties for minimal gains. One of the most significant of these offensives was the Second Battle of Champagne, launched on September 25, 1915. Preceded by 3 days of heavy artillery bombardment, the Franco-British forces attempted to breach the German defenses but were met with fierce resistance and counterattacks that quickly sealed any breakthroughs. In the autumn of 1915, Bulgaria joined the Central Powers, significantly altering the strategic balance in the Balkans. Bulgarian forces, in coordination with German and Austro-Hungarian troops, launched an offensive against Serbia. The Serbian army, already weakened by previous battles and outnumbered, was unable to withstand the combined assault. Despite the landing of French and British forces in Salonika, or modern-day Thessaloniki, to support their Serbian ally, the intervention came too late to prevent the collapse of Serbia. The Serbian army, along with thousands of civilian refugees, conducted a harrowing retreat through the mountains of Albania to reach the safety of Allied ships on the Adriatic coast. The events of 1915 underscored the complexity and scale of the First World War. The failure of the Gallipoli campaign and the limited successes of the Italian offensives highlighted the challenges of achieving decisive victories in the face of entrenched defenses and well-coordinated enemy responses. The German and Austro-Hungarian victories on the Eastern Front demonstrated the potential for significant territorial gains, but also illustrated the difficulties in completely neutralizing a major power like Russia. The multiplication of fronts stretched the resources and strategic focus of all belligerents. The entrance of new participants, such as Italy and Bulgaria, further complicated the alliances and increased the number of battlefronts. Each new front brought additional logistical challenges and necessitated the allocation of more troops and supplies, leading to an even greater strain on national economies and military infrastructures. The campaigns of 1915 provided several strategic and tactical lessons. The importance of intelligence and reconnaissance was underscored by the successes and failures on various fronts. The role of artillery in modern warfare was further emphasized, as massive bombardments became a prelude to infantry assaults. However, these bombardments often failed to achieve the desired effect, as defenders adapted by building deeper and more resilient trench systems. The year also highlighted the limitations of offensive operations against well-prepared defenses. Both the Allies and the Central Powers recognized the need for improved coordination, better logistical support, and more innovative tactics to break the stalemate that characterized much of the war. As 1915 drew to a close, it was clear that the war would not end quickly. The initial hopes for swift, decisive victories had been dashed, and both sides prepared for a prolonged conflict. The multiplication of fronts ensured that the war would continue to spread, drawing in more nations and resources. The strategic decisions and battles of 1915 set the stage for the even more extensive and deadly campaigns that would follow, shaping the course of the First World War and the future of Europe. The Dardanelles Campaign, also known as the Gallipoli Campaign, stands as one of the most ambitious and tragic operations of the First World War. It was an attempt by the Allies to break the stalemate on the Western Front and to open a new front that would knock the Ottoman Empire out of the war. This campaign was championed by Winston Churchill, the British First Lord of the Admiralty, who saw it as a way to restore momentum to the Allied cause and re-establish a crucial supply route to Russia. But before we go more in depth into the details of this fateful campaign, let's give a bit more background and strategic context of the importance of this battle. The Ottoman Empire, once a powerful entity, was in decline by the late 19th and early 20th centuries, earning the moniker the Sick Man of Europe. Despite its weakening state, the Ottomans controlled strategically vital territories, including the Dardanelles and the Bosporus Straits, which were crucial for controlling access between the Mediterranean and the Black Sea. As the First World War erupted in 1914, both the Entente powers, comprising Britain, France, and Russia, and the Central Powers, comprising Germany, Austria-Hungary, and the Ottoman Empire, sought to leverage the Ottoman Empire's strategic position. Germany had been investing heavily in the Ottoman military and infrastructure, gaining influence. Historical animosities, particularly with Russia, and geopolitical considerations, including the British seizure of 2 Ottoman battleships, prompted the Ottomans to join the Central Powers. The Ottoman Empire's entry into the war in October 1914 had significant ramifications. Ottoman forces attacked Russian ports in the Black Sea, compelling Russia to divert troops to the Caucasus. Britain and France also had to allocate resources to counter Ottoman advances in the Middle East. Additionally, Ottoman control of the Dardanelles and the Bosporus blocked supply routes from the Allies to Russia, exacerbating the difficulties faced by the Russian military. From the moment the Ottoman Empire joined the Central Powers in late 1914, the Allies faced significant challenges. The Ottomans controlled the Dardanelles, a narrow strait connecting the Aegean Sea to the Sea of Marmara, and by extension, the Black Sea. This geographical choke point was crucial for the Allies because it was the primary sea route to Russia. The Russian Empire, fighting on the Eastern Front, was in desperate need of supplies, and the Dardanelles provided a potential lifeline. Churchill argued that a successful assault on the Dardanelles could achieve several strategic objectives. It would force the Ottomans out of the war, open a direct supply route to Russia, and potentially encourage neutral Balkan states to join the Allies. Despite considerable opposition from several French and British military leaders, who were skeptical of the feasibility and strategic value of the operation, the decision was made to proceed. The campaign began with a naval operation on March 18, 1915. The plan was to force a passage through the Dardanelles by neutralizing the Ottoman defenses, including shore batteries and extensive minefields. The Allied fleet, composed of British and French battleships, began its assault on the straits. However, the operation quickly encountered severe difficulties. Ottoman artillery, expertly positioned and commanded by German advisors, inflicted heavy damage on the Allied ships. Mines, which had been laid across the strait, proved particularly devastating, sinking several vessels and forcing the fleet to withdraw. Following the failure of the naval assault, the Allies decided to launch a land invasion of the Gallipoli Peninsula to secure the straits. On April 25, 1915, British, Australian, New Zealand, and French troops landed at multiple beaches along the southern tip of the peninsula. This amphibious landing marked the beginning of a protracted and bloody campaign. The landings met fierce resistance from the Ottoman defenders, who were well prepared and heavily entrenched, under the command of Mustafa Kemal, later known as Ataturk. The Turkish forces mounted a tenacious defense. The Anzac, or Australian and New Zealand Army Corps troops, landing at what would become known as Anzac Cove, faced immediate and intense opposition. Despite suffering heavy casualties, they managed to establish a precarious foothold. Throughout the summer of 1915, the Allies attempted to break through the Ottoman defenses. However, the rugged terrain, coupled with the well-fortified Turkish positions, resulted in limited progress and high casualties. In an effort to outflank the Turkish forces, a second landing was carried out in early August at Suvla Bay, north of the original landing sites. This operation aimed to cut off the Ottoman troops and achieve a decisive breakthrough. The Suvla landing, however, was poorly executed and failed to achieve its objectives. The lack of coordination, logistical difficulties, and stiff Turkish resistance led to another stalemate. The troops at Suvla Bay and Anzac Cove found themselves entrenched in a grim and protracted struggle. The conditions for the Allied soldiers on the Gallipoli Peninsula were abysmal. The summer heat, combined with the scarcity of clean water and inadequate sanitation, led to widespread disease. Malaria, dysentery, and other illnesses took a heavy toll on the troops, exacerbating the already high casualties from combat. By the end of 1915, it became clear that the Gallipoli campaign was a failure, and it became evident that the Gallipoli campaign was unsustainable. The High Command, recognizing the futility of further assaults and the immense human cost, decided to evacuate the Allied forces. The evacuation, conducted in December 1915 and January 1916, was remarkably well executed, with minimal casualties. The meticulous planning and execution of the withdrawal contrasted sharply with the earlier phases of the campaign. However, the aftermath of the Gallipoli campaign was disastrous for the Allied forces. The campaign resulted in approximately 250,000 Allied casualties, with around 58,000 soldiers killed and 192,000 wounded or missing. The majority of these casualties were from the British, Australian, and New Zealand forces. The Anzac alone suffered around 28,000 casualties, with 8,700 Australians and 2,700 New Zealanders killed. These losses represented a significant portion of the military personnel from these relatively small nations and had a profound impact on their societies. The campaign was a significant blow to Allied morale, highlighting severe deficiencies in planning and execution. The initial naval assault had been overly optimistic, underestimating the strength of the Ottoman defenses and the challenges posed by the heavily mined waters. The subsequent land campaign suffered from poor intelligence, inadequate coordination between naval and ground forces, and logistical failures. The harsh terrain and strong Ottoman resistance turned what was envisioned as a swift victory into a protracted and bloody stalemate. For the Ottoman Empire, the successful defense of Gallipoli was a major victory that boosted national pride and morale. The campaign's success was largely attributed to the strategic acumen and leadership of Mustafa Kemal, a commander of the Ottoman 19th Division. Kemal's decisive actions, such as his famous order to his troops at Anzac Cove, "I am not ordering you to attack. I am ordering you to die," exemplified his commitment and tactical brilliance. His leadership during the campaign cemented his reputation as a national hero, and he would later leverage this prestige to lead Turkey in the War of Independence. Mustafa Kemal, who took the surname Ataturk, or Father of the Turks, became the founding father of modern Turkey, implementing sweeping reforms that secularized and modernized the nation. The Gallipoli campaign also had significant political ramifications within the Allied countries. In Britain, the failure led to intense scrutiny and criticism of the government and military leadership. Winston Churchill, who had been a key advocate for the campaign, was demoted and resigned from the government, temporarily ending his political career. The debacle contributed to the fall of the Asquith government and the formation of a coalition government under David Lloyd George. In Australia and New Zealand, the Gallipoli campaign became a defining moment of national identity. The Anzac soldiers' bravery and sacrifices are commemorated annually on Anzac Day, April 25th, which has become a day of national remembrance. The campaign fostered a sense of unity and pride, playing a crucial role in the development of national consciousness in both countries. For the Ottoman Empire, the victory at Gallipoli provided a much-needed morale boost and delayed Allied efforts to open a new front in the Middle East. However, the war continued to take a heavy toll on the empire, which faced multiple fronts and internal strife. The end of World War I saw the dissolution of the Ottoman Empire, but the successful defense of Gallipoli remained a symbol of resistance and resilience. In the broader context of World War I, the Gallipoli campaign had several strategic implications. The failure to secure the Dardanelles prolonged the war by preventing the Allies from establishing a direct supply route to Russia, which could have alleviated some of the pressures on the Eastern Front. The campaign's resources and manpower, diverted from the Western Front, contributed to the prolonged stalemate and immense human cost of the war. The Gallipoli campaign's legacy continues to be studied and debated by historians and military strategists. Its ambitious goals, flawed execution, and tragic outcomes offer enduring lessons in military strategy and the complexities of wartime decision-making. The campaign's legacy serves as a reminder of the profound costs of war and the enduring human spirit in the face of adversity. During the early stages of the First World War, Serbia emerged as a resilient defender against the Austro-Hungarian Empire's aggressive military campaigns. Despite being vastly outnumbered and facing superior military resources, the Serbian army managed to repel multiple Austro-Hungarian offensives in 1914, achieving notable victories at battles such as Cer and Kolubara. These successes bolstered Serbian morale and demonstrated the determination of its forces. However, the tide turned dramatically in 1915, leading to one of the most harrowing episodes of the war. Serbia's strategic location in the Balkans made it a key target for the Central Powers. Controlling Serbia would provide Germany and Austria-Hungary with a direct land route to their ally, the Ottoman Empire, facilitating the movement of troops and supplies. Additionally, it would secure the Central Powers' southern flank, enabling them to focus their efforts on other fronts. In the autumn of 1915, the Central Powers launched a meticulously planned and coordinated offensive against Serbia. This campaign was significantly bolstered by the entry of Bulgaria into the war on the side of the Central Powers. Bulgaria, harboring territorial ambitions in Macedonia and seeking revenge for its defeat in the Second Balkan War, provided a crucial new front against Serbia. On October 6, 1915, the combined forces of Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Bulgaria initiated their assault. The German 11th Army, under General August von Mackensen, and the Austro-Hungarian Third Army attacked from the north, while the Bulgarian First Army struck from the east. This pincer movement placed immense pressure on the Serbian defenses. Despite their previous successes, the Serbian army, under the command of Field Marshal Radomir Putnik, faced insurmountable odds. Outnumbered and outgunned, the Serbs were unable to hold their lines against the relentless advance of the Central Powers. By mid-October, the situation had become critical, with Serbian forces facing encirclement. In a desperate bid to avoid complete annihilation, the Serbian High Command ordered a full retreat. What followed was one of the most tragic and grueling episodes of the war: the Great Serbian Retreat. The Serbian army, along with thousands of civilians, embarked on a treacherous journey through the rugged mountains of Montenegro and Albania. This retreat, conducted in the harsh conditions of winter, saw the troops and civilians endure extreme cold, hunger, and disease. Thousands perished along the way due to the brutal conditions and relentless attacks by pursuing enemy forces. Franco-British forces, having been transported from the failed Gallipoli campaign to the Greek port city of Salonika, attempted to march north and link up with the retreating Serbian army. However, their advance was too slow and insufficient to provide effective relief. The Central Powers' control over the region, combined with the difficult terrain, made such coordination almost impossible. By late 1915, the remnants of the Serbian army reached the Adriatic coast. In a dramatic evacuation, Allied ships rescued the survivors and transported them to the island of Corfu. This island would serve as a place of recovery and reorganization for the shattered Serbian forces. After a period of recuperation, the Serbian army was transferred to Salonika, where they joined French and British troops to form the Army of the Orient. This multinational force remained in the region, awaiting the opportunity to strike back, which would eventually come in the autumn of 1918. The defeat of Serbia in 1915 had significant strategic implications. With Serbia subdued, the Central Powers now controlled the entire central area of the Balkans. This victory allowed them to secure vital communication lines between Germany, Austria-Hungary, Bulgaria, and the Ottoman Empire. The uninterrupted flow of troops, resources, and supplies across this corridor bolstered the Central Powers' war effort. For Serbia, the retreat and subsequent occupation represented a profound national tragedy. The country suffered immense losses, not only in terms of military casualties but also civilian deaths and the destruction of infrastructure. The exile of the Serbian government and army, however, preserved the hope of liberation and continued resistance against the Central Powers. The Great Serbian Retreat remains a powerful symbol of endurance and national resilience in Serbian history. The campaign highlighted the brutal realities of war and the impact of strategic geography on military operations. It also underscored the importance of alliances and the complex dynamics of regional politics in the Balkans. For the Central Powers, the conquest of Serbia was a significant, albeit temporary, triumph. It provided them with strategic advantages but also exposed the limitations of their overextended supply lines and the challenges of occupying hostile territory. The eventual Allied counteroffensive in the Balkans in 1918 would reverse many of these gains, leading to the liberation of Serbia and the collapse of the Central Powers. In sum, the events of 1915 in Serbia were a testament to the relentless nature of the First World War, where strategic ambitions, national determination, and the harsh realities of conflict intersected in one of the war's most dramatic and poignant episodes.